Speaking of restaking, Ethereum Shapella upgrade, mate. We can now withdraw our ETH from the Beacon chain. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one theory is that get ready for a massive dump Ethereum. But actually, I read a post with the opposite idea, in that it's probably going to get more staked, because 2 years ago, whatever, when you had to stake on Ethereum to test the Beacon chain before you withdrew your token, and you had to know that you couldn't withdraw your tokens for an indeterminate amount of time. I feel like now that people are allowed to withdraw, I don't think it's a signal to sell. For me, it's a signal to stake. I can withdraw it tomorrow if I want. So I feel more secure in staking. So actually more Ethereum might be staked. What do you think?
Definitely, that's the original theory was, massive dump as everyone gets out. But then everyone started going, well, hang on, people who were staking Ethereum from so long ago are long-term ETH bulls. They are probably also in some way whales. And so they're not really interested in selling their ETH when the prices come down so much. There might be some people who have to pay taxes in some way, shape or form from this. I mean, they've been earning a yield on their ETH. And so that might be a bit more jurisdictional based, of people who actually have to pay some money in taxes because they've earned quite a significant amount of ETH in that period of time. And now that it's available and unlocked, maybe that potentially means they have to do it. There are some pretty cool websites being built at the moment. I'm looking at one right now. And basically it's saying that it's showing the withdrawals and the deposits that go on. And yes, withdrawals has massively increased. So there was basically around 19 million Ethereum on the Beacon chain. And right now it's saying there's about 860,000 ETH queued up for withdrawal. So it can't all come out at once. I know there is only a certain amount of ETH that can be pulled out per block. And that obviously limits the amount of ETH pulled out per day. So there's a bit of a queuing system to get out. So that's a fairly significant move, 19 million. So, 800,000, 850,000 coming out. It's not a small amount.
What is that? Is that 20% almost?
No. That'd be more like 5%.
I'm an engineer, by the way.
But it's interesting, like there is some large spikes of ETH deposits going in as well. So not as much as coming out. So there is definitely a negative net flow out, but huge amounts are going in as well. I think there's probably now a bit more surety about the ETH coming out. So there is, people who are willing to go into the ETH staking now. I think, well, we talked about this in January as one of the predictions, and I guess, my prediction back then was that we would see a reduction in ETH staked, and I thought it would affect the price. Clearly, it hasn't affected the price since price has gone up, but the amount of ETH staked has gone down. I think after this initial push, as everyone's queued to get their ETH out, we're talking about potentially, which is, I actually don't know how fast they can get 860,000 out. It's probably going to take a few days at the very least, maybe a week or more. That might settle. So people who want it out are probably doing it now. That queue might start diminishing. And if the continuation of people going in keeps happening, then, more ETH will go up, and, it's a bullish narrative. People have now got Ethereum staking kind of as a completed element on the Ethereum blockchain. So,
and the question, I guess, the people who are withdrawing are asking themselves is, do they really want to sell their ETH in what appears to be the start of a bull market? Do they want to play that short-term game where they sell it immediately and hope for a price drop and then buy it back up?
Who knows? Who knows what they're doing with it? I mean, people maybe are just selling it. Maybe other people are putting it into other DeFi applications. Maybe they now want to use their ETH to leverage it. Maybe they're pulling it out to put it into a liquid staking derivative now, like STE, so they can do both. They can earn the yield and they can go and use it as collateral. There's all these kind of degen plays, and I think some of the earlier people in this space would have been degen players. They would have been whales, and they got some money to throw around. So who knows? 860,000 ETH, if that all went to sell, that would put downward price pressure.
Well, I'll be tempted to get more ETH at this point in time if they wanted to sell it. It's
Well,
it's
then
really good. Yeah.
let's talk about price then. ETH has broken the 2K USD amount again now. So to sit there and say that the ETH withdrawals was going to be a bearish event is clearly not the case. In the last 24 hours, it's had a big jump up. Finally breaking the 2,000, following Bitcoin breaking the 30,000. This doesn't look like bearishness, does it?
Now, there's still a couple of people out there who think we're in a bear market, but to me, it's as obvious as anything. We're definitely in a bull. It's got me really excited. But how long do you think it'll take us to reach the peak of this bull market, or at least to reach the 60K, 70K mark?
How long's a piece of string? How long's a piece of string? Well, I think that we are still following the 4-year cycle pretty well. We've had that play out multiple times now, and it's timing really well with macro events. I know, big players like Raoul Pal says that he doesn't believe that the BTC halving cycle is driving it. He thinks it just happens to coincide with the macro cycle, and he might be right, but I think maybe the macro cycle coinciding with the BTC halving cycle is actually just extra fuel to the fire. So it's hard to deny what's happened in the last 8 years as far as the 4-year cycle. So if that still plays out, then it's 2025 is sometime when the bull market tops out at. With the halving being April next year, history has shown us that we've had a run up to the halving.
To get it straight, the pattern has been 4 years, somewhere in between that Bitcoin reaches its previous peaks, and then in 4 years it reaches its new peak.
Not quite like that. So the bull from the top of the cycle to the bottom of the cycle is typically a 4-year run, and somewhere in between, about a little bit halfway in between, is when the halving of it happens, which is when the amount of Bitcoin that gets released at mining is halved. So that has obviously been a crush on supply. And so crush on supply usually drives up prices in a commodity type sector. And so we've seen that play out pretty reasonably. But the markets know this. It's not like it's an unknown event. So typically the market front runs that event and the prices will push up before then. And so we saw that in, was it 2019? 2020 was the last halving. And so 2019 was the year when prices started to recover. Like we had 2018 was the big bear market. Prices went down 85%. 2019, we saw some significant, increases in price leading into the halving event. And then after the halving event, you typically got 6 to 12 months of up only kind of price action. And that's repeated twice now. So I don't see a reason why that won't happen, especially when macro events are also aligning reasonably well with it. So, when will it hit 60,000 or 70,000? Don't know. It hasn't hit that prior to a halving before. So we've not reached an all-time high prior to a halving. It's always been after a halving event. So that could mean we're not going to actually reach 70,000 until June, July next year. But history doesn't have to repeat itself. There's obviously a lot of momentum. There's a lot of excitement in the market at the moment. So we are in like a mini uptrend here. I think we will have pullbacks. I think there will be, 50% corrections like there has been in the past. I can't see a new low then. It's just so hard to see some of the bears that still think that we are going to hit a new low.
Which brings us to the point of being ready to take profits when we can. And obviously, past does not predict future, but do you think the halving is a good milestone maybe to set as a point to start dollar cost averaging out of the market?
Not financial advice. I think everybody's got to come up with their own strategy of where they do it. And is that a bad plan? No, it's not a bad plan. I mean, some people might say, wait till it hits all-time highs again and then start dollar cost averaging out. So there's no right or wrong answer to it. The right answer is to take profits. and to take profits at a time when you're comfortable with it, and to definitely take profits when you really don't feel like it. Like if everything's euphoric and it feels like money's gonna keep going up, that's definitely the time to take profits. So you got to feel your emotions in that. As for when, the Bitcoin halving is often a sign that the market is heading towards the top, but history has shown that it's actually probably not a good time to start selling, because that's really when it takes off after that.
And maybe another good point to what you've added, definitely not financial advice, but this, I think, is just general wisdom, in that it's great to have a plan, in that I may decide to start taking my tokens out before the halving, or after the halving, or after I feel like I've gotten to a peak, or even if I start feeling super emotional and excited about it. But the thing is that I really should have these rules written somewhere down, and I should promise myself to, regardless of how I feel after I've written these rules down. The thing is, I made them when I was more logical, when things went crazy. So it's probably a really good idea to, right now, before things get crazy, whatever those rules are, somebody should go out, research the rules, write them down, whatever they are, and then stick to them.
Yeah, and we got to remember that even when crypto is going strong, 50% corrections occur. And so if you are feeling really good about how much money you've got, have a good hard think about how would you feel if 50% of it disappeared overnight. And crypto can do that to you. So if that's uncomfortable feeling, maybe it's time to take some profits. And remember, if we get to a full-on bear, then 80% corrections are more the norm. And how would you feel about that? Look at your portfolio and make 20% of it and go, how would I feel? And so those are kind of questions you've got to ask yourself. And if the answer is you're uncomfortable with that, take some profits.
That's a really good way of looking at it. I've definitely lost 80-90% in some of my portfolio. And really, if I'd actually asked myself that question during that moment of excitement when everything was just going up and crazy, I mean, we're all learning as we do this, and we try to get better rules each time. If I'd actually asked myself that question, how would I feel if I lost 80% of this? And if the answer was not great, I would definitely have withdrawn that and allowed the price to climb to whatever it's going to climb to. And if it drops, it drops. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The thing is, I've done my valuation. I've taken my profits, because it's impossible to ever time the top or the bottom unless you're really lucky.
No, exactly. I think when it comes to taking profits, there's like three kind of scenarios that can happen. Is that the price can go up, you'll sell, and the price goes down, and you've sold the top. You're an absolute genius. No one does that. No one ever actually hits that mark. Second option is price goes up, you sell, price keeps going up, and you feel like a bit of an idiot. That's probably more likely scenario to happen. And then scenario 3 is price goes up, you sell, price keeps going up, you feel like an idiot, price dumps, and you're a genius again. That's probably the most likely scenario when it comes to taking profits. And maybe there's a fourth scenario, actually, is if you've got too high of a price target, it never actually hits and you never take any profits whatsoever. That's a bad outcome too. So you definitely want to be in the camp where you take profits.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that is something that a lot of investors, especially in crypto, have a difficulty with. I think there's some who maybe sell too early. Price goes up by 10% and they go, oh my God, better take profits. But there's definitely some with diamond hands who just don't know when to let go of some projects. And I think there's like a happy medium there that would be interesting to hit. And I really like the idea of dollar cost averaging out, because then it's really hard to make a mistake. Fine, I've made 10% on this token. If that's good enough for me, that's fantastic. I'm going to withdraw a little bit, maybe enough to take profit. I mean, or at least cover my initial investment. Make another 20%, great. Take a little bit more out. And I personally like the idea of dollar cost averaging out and dollar cost averaging in as well when we're in a bull market.
Yeah, there you go. So the price is doing well, and we're already talking about exit strategies. not financial advice, only opinions, only people. The last one I want to talk about, Will, which I thought was pretty exciting and pretty good news if they can do this, is FTX, the horror show that was FTX. They are now saying they've recovered about $7.2 billion of the whole, which is around $12 billion. So still a lot of money missing to repay all the depositors. But they're also talking about restarting and reopening the exchange with the idea that the profits made by the exchange will go back to repaying depositors who've lost money as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, FTX is a great lesson in terms of the whole trust us. And it's not only in crypto, it's everywhere, banks collapse. So, I mean, I'd be hesitant myself to get back into FTX just because, is it just the name that's staying, or is it the same people who used to be there? If they're the same people, well, what has changed about them?
I think the people are gone. I think they're going to jail, so the people are gone. So this is being restarted by others. I'm pretty sure. I can't imagine Sam Bankman-Friedman is going to be sitting at the top of that chain again, mate. So let's assume that it's being run by other people.
I think the problem with brand is that it's really hard to clean up a brand that's already done that. I mean, I have personally no reason to go back to FTX if I know that I can go to Binance or somebody else. So I think it'll be really difficult for them to rebuild that. They really need a great incentive for me to come. Now, if it's just the profits to give me back my personal money, I'd still be hesitant to sort of put good money after, let's put quote unquote bad money. I think they owe me that money legally and they should give it to me regardless. But then if they had a really cool incentive mechanism in that, fine, trade with us, and as long as we're making profit, we're going to keep feeding you this profit on top of what they owe you. I think that would be really interesting. But I feel like they really need a good incentive. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would fail. I think they have completely blown trust, obviously, and I think the brand is too tarnished. So the people who might get back on FTX and start using it are the people who lost significant amounts of money and want to start using the exchange again and want it to work so that the rest of their money can be repaid. I mean, at the moment, 7.2 billion, it's roughly 60 cents to the dollar, maybe a bit more that they'll get back, which is pretty good. Not as good as getting 100% of it back, but I can't see enough people wanting to use that exchange and use that brand in order for all the, the extra 40 cents on the dollar to come back to the depositors. So it's great that they've gotten and recovered so much money. I think relaunching the exchange would fail.
Yeah, I can't see them managing to do that. Maybe one way they could repay their sort of like stakeholders is probably harder, but maybe they could do something that is completely decentralized if possible. Start a decentralized exchange, create maybe a token or something like that is for fees. And in a sense, creating a token is a way of printing money as long as there's enough faith in it and so forth, so on and so forth. And maybe try to repay the people whom they owe with that new token, I guess, which is kind of a promise for future value. But maybe that's one way they could do it if they wanted to be serious about it. But
I don't think they could. I don't think they'd be legally allowed to. I mean, they're supposed to be clawing back money to give back to the depositors because so much has been lost. The company's in bankruptcy. So for them to go spend money to go build a new venture on a promise that it will work and bring money in, I don't think they're legally allowed. So I'm not an expert on that, that's for sure. But I couldn't imagine that's allowed. I think they should recover as much money as they can, pay out what they can, close the book on it. The brand is tarnished. The brand is dead. No one wants to go anywhere near it.
And let's be honest, they won't be the first exchange to have gone down either due to a hack or bad behavior. And they likely won't be the last exchange or bank to go down. That's kind of the sad truth. And it's kind of a reminder that, let's only keep our tokens in exchanges that we're actively trading. Otherwise, even keeping it in a smart contract, decentralized exchange is a risk. These things get hacked. Anything that you're not actively trading really should be in a wallet or a ledger, possible.
Here's the question for you. Coinbase, the only public company that's a crypto exchange, if it went bankrupt and lost depositors' money, which it could only do through some kind of a legal mechanism because they have to keep it all public, and they are not a bank, so they can't use fractional reserve. They have to have all deposits there. But I don't know, if something went really badly there and they didn't have the money there, is the US government somewhat obliged to bail them out, considering it's a public company, like they do with other banks?
Yeah, that's it. What is it that banks have over governments that make them but maybe I guess bailouts should really only happen to prevent contagion and social collapse and trust issues, because if I hear that the bank next door has collapsed and I'm concerned about the other bank, I might do a bank run on that one and then it becomes contagion. I guess if Coinbase collapsed, yeah, a lot of people would get hurt, maybe even to the tune of billions, but then there probably wouldn't be contagion. And I imagine that the government would probably be reluctant to bail it out.
Well, the big difference being is that Coinbase is not a bank, so they cannot use fractional reserve lending. They have to have 100% of the deposits of their customers safe. That's part of what the business has to do. They're not a bank. They can't get rid of that. And so because the public company, they disclose all that. So theoretically, if they are showing their books open and honestly, transparently, they show that they have 100% deposits back. The reason why Coinbase may go bankrupt in some way, shape, or form is that they try to borrow money from someone to expand the business, do something with the business, and that venture entirely fails and they run out of capital. They don't have any income coming through. Therefore, the company's bankrupt, but all the depositors' money is still safe. So there's no incentivization for the government to step in. They're just going to let a business fail because all the depositors are made whole. They step into banks and bail out banks because they are allowed to have a fractional reserve system. They don't have the money on hand. The government comes in to bail them out because they want to make sure the individual depositors stay whole. So that's the kind of big difference, I guess, between what Coinbase does and something else. They might step in like they stepped in with things like automotive industries. The government steps in because of the employment issues around it. They want to make sure that they still have the capability to manufacture XYZ product or a car, in the example I'm using, and they want to make sure that that many employees don't just lose their job. So that's the other reason they could step in. They could step in to save Coinbase just because it's got thousands of employees. I don't know. But it's just not the same as a bank failure because other people's money is not at risk, and Coinbase legally cannot do anything with people's money.
That actually brings us to the point of why are people using Coinbase to store their tokens there? I guess part of it might be ignorance in terms of, well, they don't really follow the whole blockchain ethos of not your keys, not your crypto. And another thing might be just Coinbase is just super easy to onboard. But then actually that brings us to Ethereum's EIP. I can't remember the exact number, but it's about wallet abstraction. And in a nutshell, what it does is it allows wallets on the blockchain to be a little bit smarter. And that means a developer can create a completely pure smart contract wallet that backs up your tokens. It lets you maybe give several parts of your private key to different people. So if you lost your private key, you could go to your friends and relatives and say, hey, I need you to combine your piles and help me unlock my tokens. So these all sorts of cool things that Ethereum is working on that might actually make a trusted version of Coinbase not needed, in that you could actually create something that looks and feels exactly like Coinbase, but completely smart contract based. I think
that's really cool if we can get there, because at the moment, crypto is not easy. It's not simple for a new person to come in and figure out how to do self-custody and things like that. So I think the future is we will have a combination of custody providers and people who want to have self-custody. I think self-custody will become easier and easier as time goes on, and people will get more used to it and user experiences will get better at it. And yes, there is recoverability of it, because that's obviously a big risk for self-custody, and possibly for new people, too big of a risk, because if you don't understand fully about your private keys and how to back them up and how to keep it safe and how you can lose all your money, you probably shouldn't be doing it per se. So there's got to be a world where we have a bit of both, I think. I think self-custody is important, and self-custody needs to be easier for more people, but there's always going to be people who just don't want to go down that path, and that's where they find a trusted company. And trusting someone like Coinbase is easier. It's a public company.
And yeah, but being trusted, it could fail, but it's not much different from anything else out there in Web 2.
Yeah, and maybe we get to a world where, governments are happily getting along with crypto and stuff, and we're living in this world of harmony. And so maybe there's an insurance backing of crypto exchanges as well, because crypto exchanges are effectively crypto banks these days. And so maybe there is a level where, that $250,000 mark of insurance is covered for depositors in crypto exchanges. Maybe that's the future in some way, shape, or form. But who knows?
Oh yeah. It's something that I really look forward to. I know there's projects out there that are working on biometric security as an alternative to holding a private key. Probably a couple of years down the line, we'll look back at actually holding a string of characters to access your tokens, and we think that's crazy. Why didn't people just use your fingerprint? The challenge right now is that it's really difficult to process biometrics on the blockchain. It's a lot of computation. You're paying probably a couple of $100 just to log into your wallet. But there's companies working out layer 2s that are faster, cheaper, and dedicated to biometrics. So that's another thing to look forward to.
Yeah, there's challenges, but yeah, people are out there trying to solve these problems, aren't they?
That's where the money is at.
All right, let's leave our rant there, mate.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
All right. Until next time, Simon.